respectful manner with the understanding our neighbors love this country every as much as we do. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 30 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This evening, I want to take some time to talk about how business gets done here in Washington. Now, this has been, I guess, call this the lessons of a rookie. I'm starting my third year here, my second term. And during this, my first 2 years in the 111th Congress, frankly, it was like it was politics as usual. And I think the American people have had enough of that. The American people are at a point where it's not about Republicans, it's not about Democrats, but they're looking for problem solvers. And fundamentally, I think that what's most important as we go forward as problem solvers, because we know this country is facing some tremendous issues. We're at record unemployment, the highest sustained level of unemployment since the Great Depression. We have a national debt that has amassed to over $14 trillion, impacting our children, our grandchildren's future. We have all kinds of significant issues facing this nation, and we need solutions. But the solutions, they have to be solutions, I believe, that are not politics as usual. They need to be solutions that are, frankly, based on what I call principled leadership. It's the very foundation of how we make our decisions, not based on a political agenda, not based on the whims or the will of a few or many, but frankly based on principles. And that's what I want to spend some time this evening talking about, principled leadership. You know, in my time in Congress, I've seen we make a lot of decisions, an awful lot of decisions. Many of those impact not just the nation, but the world. And I see decisions made by different members using different methodology. For me, I really do fall back on principled leadership. I actually fall back on values, principles that I learned as a youth. Frankly, I take them from my experience in scouting. 41 years. This is my 41st year in scouting. It's a great organization. It serves boys and girls and develops them into fine young people. Productive, active citizens. And when I make a decision, I ask myself 4 questions, and it may sound a little old-fashioned for some folks, but frankly it works for me and it works consistently. I ask myself 4 questions principles that come from the Scout Promise, actually. The first question I take from that Scout Promise, that first question is, when I'm making a decision, I'm faced with an issue and I need to decide. The first question is, what is my duty to God? Is a decision I'm making, is it righteous according to God's Word? Is it according to my faith? Frankly, if the answer is no, I don't go any further on to question 2, 3, and 4. If I do go on, the next question is, what is my duty to country? And that is, frankly, what does the Constitution say about the decision that I'm about to make? Is it according to the rule of law? Is it according to those liberties, those freedoms, those rights, and the distribution of powers that are outlined within the Constitution? Because there are certain things the federal government is supposed to do according to the Constitution. That amount of responsibilities literally is very tiny, though, compared to what the states have retained for rights, and that is small compared to what we as individual citizens have, and as all those rights have provided through our Creator. And so my second question I ask, what is my duty to country? The third question I ask myself in terms of principles is, what is my duty to others. Now, others for me are the what I call the 660,000 really smart people that I work for in the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District. It's pretty easy to determine what the intended consequence is and the intended impact on the citizens that I serve and, frankly, that all of my colleagues serve. Because on the first page of any bill, I don't care if it's a one-page bill or 2,000 pages, that intended consequence is pretty easily and clearly articulated. It's the unintended consequences, however, that you have to work at. And it's the unintended consequences that can have the most impact on the lives of the people that we serve. And that's why communications is such an incredibly important responsibility with our constituents, including why we're here in Washington using different methods and an open-door policy and receiving, soliciting input, feedback from our constituents, but also certainly when we're back in the district and we're in those communities and we're communicating with people and they're telling their talking about the situations that they're in and how the federal government, the things that are going on are impacting their lives. That is tremendously valuable information when we are back in the district, and that's what district weeks are all about. It's about communications and feedback with your employer, and it's the people that you work for. And finally, for me, the fourth question I ask myself in terms of principles and principle leadership has to do with duty to self. And again, I borrow from scouting, my years and decades in scouting. The questions I ask myself is, am I prepared to do my best on each and every decision I make? And that is, have I worked hard to get all the information that I need? Have I worked hard to reach out to my constituents to find out, as I've read a bill, make sure that they have access to it so that they understand and I can determine and solicit from them their feedback on what the unintended consequences are. So am I prepared to do my best? Those are principles that have served me well these first 2 years, and I certainly continue my commitment to follow principled leadership going forward in serving both this country and certainly the citizens of the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District. Another set of principles that I'm pleased to share tonight came from a group of citizens within the area of the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District, and this was these are principles that were outlined by citizens who were concerned. They were concerned over the past 2 years with the things that they saw going on in their nation, in their country. They came together because they were afraid. They were afraid of what the future held. And this was in Lycoming County of the Pennsylvania 5th Congressional District. But you know what? These are principles that I have seen put forward by everyday citizens all over the nation, actually, certainly throughout my congressional district. And I appreciate the fact that they took the time. They put these together, and I have a scroll here with I'm not going to roll this out the complete way because it would definitely be a hazard. It's a wonderful scroll with over 4,000 names on it of individuals who have put their signature to standing for principles and expectations from government. The principles as put forward were, we the people of the city of Williamsport, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, United States of America, declare that we're free and independent citizens, and that we are entitled to inherent and inalienable rights which our ancestors fought to protect and for which they established government to ensure. Rights that within our founding documents come from our Creator. In the charters of those governments, our rights have been clearly and undeniably established to the exclusion of any encroachment by the civil servants elected to carry out the people's business. However, a long train of abuses and usurpations has evidenced a clear trend which, if followed to its logical conclusion, reduce the people under absolute despotism. And we protest these indefeasible rights and liberties and demand that they be redressed. And among the abuses, they outlined 7 principles. You know, principles that that I think are incredibly important. Things that you've heard about already on the floor tonight, and if as you tune in, these are issues that have taken front stage in terms of our national debate. Starting with taxation. You know, taxes have grown both continuously and geometrically, both in the number and scope, such that greater than half of all of one's income is now claimed by the government. Taxes is something that we battle on here, and it's a fundamental decision of first of all, the scope of government, what government should be in the business of doing, what constitutionally are those issues that should be funded. We're going to be engaging in significant debate through the rest of this week and certainly next week as we look at a continuing resolution of what is the proper role of government, and what is certainly looking at how we fund that and the amount of taxes that are levied on individuals. We had that debate at the end of the 111th Congress. The 111th Congress, this country was facing the largest tax increase in its history. It would have been devastating. It would have raised taxes on every American. Would have raised taxes on individuals, on families, on job creators, on small businesses. And I'm pleased that in the 11th, frankly the 12th hour, we were able to at least extend those what's called the Bush-era tax cuts, and that's been good for America. Frankly, we should have been able to make them permanent. That's something I think we need to obviously continue to work towards. But at least by extending those, we were able to restore some certainty for families, for individuals, and frankly for job creators, so that they could do their business plans and have at least restore some confidence going forward in this economy. Confidence that to allow small businesses to be able to invest their resources, to invest in capital, be it expanding building a new site of business, by expanding a product line or a service line, and hiring, creating jobs. Frankly, many of the individuals over the past year and a half, as I've traveled around in my congressional district, and I talk with folks that I know are the job creators. These are individuals that every year would take their resources, their profit, and that's not a bad word, that's a good sign of good economic times, and they'd reinvest a good portion of that profit back into their businesses, and they would create jobs. You know, in the past 2 years, because of uncertainty, much of it around taxation, they've been sitting on the sidelines. You know, they didn't know what was coming. The health care, the Obamacare that was raising taxes, was putting mandates. If you're an employer with more than 50 employees, that means more financial burdens are going to be placed on you, more mandates. So there's no encouragement to grow your business. But taxes are something that I was very pleased when we were able to extend those tax cuts. That's the American people's money. They've had that for almost a decade, and so we need to continue that. The second principle that these good folks have identified is national debt, and then the public credit has been tapped beyond any reasonable ability to repay within the current generation. I think our national debt is somewhere around every man, woman, and child. When I go out into schools, and I like to read to the kindergarten kids, but I love getting out to the seniors because they're getting ready to go out into the world. You know, they're just on the threshold of life. And I usually open up by saying that, first of all, I work for you. I'm your member of Congress. I work for you. And each of you owes $143,000. And I don't take checks. And that's a good icebreaker for a sad notation of that really is how much each of them owe towards our national debt. And so we are approaching over $14 trillion at this point. What that does, I think, is well, frankly, it's probably our largest threat that we have to national security. The fact that we have that much debt accumulated, and that 60% of that debt is held by foreign countries. Our #1 lender is China. And I think that just puts us in a very, very dangerous situation for the future. So I think that I'm joined this evening by a good friend of mine from also lives in Lycoming County. Mr. Marino, if you want to step up and talk a little bit about your thoughts on national debt and what that means to us going forward, that'd be great. Go ahead and join me at the podium there. This is a great member, Tom Marino. He represents a neighboring district of mine. We share 2 counties. I've known Tom for a long time. I worked in health care in Lycoming County for about 28 years. Tom's a former district attorney there, a native son, and I was real glad and real proud to see him come to Congress. And so I'm going to yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I come to the floor this evening to applaud my good colleague and friend from Pennsylvania. In fact, our districts border one another. And we have the same philosophies because we're so close. Our districts overlap. We share a couple of counties. And we both share the sentiments of our constituents. The people who voted for us, the people who didn't vote for us. We have a job to do. We've been hired and directed to be sent to Washington and very clearly told what we need to do, and that is to continue to cut taxes, cut the spending, downsize Washington, which a combination of those 3 will create jobs. Like my good friend from Pennsylvania, we need to get back to a simple time when we look at the Constitution, we apply the Constitution, we follow the Constitution, and in doing that, I'm confident that we are on the right track. I know our constituents from Williamsport may be watching us and from around the district, and I want to tell those individuals, as well as anyone else watching around the country, that we work for you. We know what the message was, and we have started that process. I look forward to, as my good colleague does, as reaching across the aisle, working with our colleagues there to improve the quality of life for people in this country, to make sure that our children hopefully have a better life than we do, and to certainly make certain that we do not strap them with this unbelievable cost and debt that I'm afraid if we do not take control of this now, we will absolutely lose total control of it, and we just have no idea of how far our finances can be plunged into total chaos. So again, I want to thank my colleague for having me here. I'm going to sit and listen to more of this debate. I appreciate the time. I want to say hello to my friends back in my hometown of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and the people in the 10th Congressional District, and also my friends in the adjoining district of my good colleague from Pennsylvania. And Mr. Chairman, I yield my time.
All right, I thank the gentleman for joining me tonight on the floor to share about principles and the needs that we have there that we're faced with. Again, these are difficult times. You know, one of the things in terms of this much debt that's out there, it reminds me we just hit a kind of a milestone of being married for 30 years not long ago, and soon after my wife and I were married, we bought a house. And it was a time where the country was facing similar situations, such high unemployment and, frankly, high inflation. And this is a tremendous concern that I have, that with all this borrowing and this debt, that inflation will naturally follow. And, in fact, frankly, this was at the term of President Jimmy Carter. We were looking at real estate. It was a time of stagflation, both high inflation and high unemployment. And my wife and I bought a home. We got a great deal because real estate wasn't selling, much like today. And we thought we got a first-time state mortgage rate. And we thought we were just doing great because we got this interest rate. I believe it was 18%. Now, which was pretty good because at the time the banks, under this type of inflation that naturally comes from this kind of borrowing and spending, the banks were lending at 20–21% interest. So it's something we have a responsibility not just to today's generation, but our children, our grandchildren, to get this national debt under consideration. The next principle I wanted to touch on was national defense. And the principles as presented here talks about, frankly, the placement of troops without formal acts of war and the concern with that. But it also goes on the fact that we put so much into theaters of war. I happen to believe I've got a son and a daughter-in-law in the United States Army. They were just married yesterday, actually. They're in Washington here with us a couple days. And I'm very proud of our troops and what they do. I believe that constitutionally that national defense is really is our most important job. It's up front in the Constitution that's what we should do. Within the principles outlined here before you, it also, and this is the finer print, it's hard to read, but it talks about the fact is we can't ignore national defense here at home. And we've got threats here. We know that. When you look at the southern border in particular and just the unchecked illegal immigration into this country, and I realize that many of those folks are coming in search of a better way of life, but frankly there are folks coming in here that I think could easily come across the borders and probably have to seek to do us harm, and the things that they can carry across that border. And so we need to make sure that we are securing that border. That is, we should be doing everything we possibly can. I think that this principle speaks to that, and I think that this country has been failing at making sure that our ports and our borders are ultimately safe. This is a different day. This is when our enemies don't wear a uniform and don't march under a specific flag. We have to take the measures and the precautions to make sure that the American people stay safe. That is our #1 job in this country, is safety and security. The fourth principle under here to be addressed is political corruption. That is something that frankly we need individuals at all levels of government that are public servants, that approach their jobs with a servant's heart as opposed to be self-serving. And I know that Mr. Moreno, who is now in Congress, has that servant's heart. Many of my new members, new colleagues, and certainly folks I've served with the past 2 years have that focus and commitment, frankly, of service and sacrifice to our constituents. And so I think that is something I respect the fact that that is on here. That is certainly something that's important, that the people are here that are serving not just at the federal level, but the state level and local level for the right reasons. Central banking and money. I'm going to switch these charts just to be able to read them a little better. Just to be able to reference a little better that, the fact that the U.S. Congress really has delegated, and I think illegally delegated, their vested powers, coining money, taxation, regulation of commerce, making treaties, appropriating public money, all things that the powers of the House in particular is in the legislative branch. We have 3 branches of government, but they're not equal. They're co-sovereign, but they're not co-equal. And we have delegated over not just 2 years, but many years, much of our authority, much of our responsibility as a legislative branch to the administrative branch. And frankly, much of that has been very inappropriate. And I think it's a time of going back to our roots and make sure we go back to those founding principles and looking at what is it that we are supposed to be doing that we have that we have deferred, that we have designated and allowed the administrative branch to now do. Certainly, the principle number 6 is central planning, that constant intervention in the economy through regulations, subsidies, tariffs, taxes, policies have altered the fabric of the nation's free market economy. Just the past 2 years. And we're dealing with it now. We voted to repeal the Patient Protection Affordable Health Care Act. The media sometimes refers that as the Obamacare plan. And we passed in a bipartisan way to repeal that bill. And for that very reason, that top-down approach. I mean, Washington is famous for a top-down approach, a cookie-cutter approach. I've seen it in my service on the Education Committee, where it's a cookie-cutter. No child left behind. Believes that every child should go to college. Well, that's great if that child has that aspirations, those attributes. That's wonderful. I'm going to be dedicated to make sure that we make that as affordable and accessible as possible. But not every child is on that path. Some children will be technical training. Some children, it will be going into the military and learning a skill or a trade there. Some will be going right into the workforce. We need to be empowering through education, not top-down from a central planning way from the national government. We should be empowering our best resources for making sure that every child's individual potential is developed. You know who that is? That's the parents, the teachers, the administrators. It's the local school board members, that governing body, and local school boards. That's the way the founders intended it, because they know what the way it would work best. Well, I'm joined by another neighbor of mine across the state line to the north, Mr. Tom Reed from the great state of New York. Mr. Reed, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand today to join my colleague and applaud my colleague for coming to the floor of the House to articulate what are truly our founding and our core principles. We should be going back to our Constitution on a regular basis and always recognize that what our founding fathers envisioned for America was a limited federal government, not an America that guarantees everyone's success in life, but rather a government that guarantees that every American, every man, woman, and child in America has the opportunity to succeed. We do not, at the federal government level, pick winners and losers. What we should do is always guarantee that the opportunity in America is there for our young men and women and children of the generations of today and the generation of tomorrow have the opportunity to succeed and control their own destiny. I see in America right now my good friend from Pennsylvania who is articulating here today the concerns that the nation of America truly is fighting for its existence. We see a national debt that is at $14 trillion in publicly held debt. You talk to people about the unfunded liabilities, putting that national debt at $200 trillion plus or minus. That's $242,000 for each man, woman, and child in America. That is not sustainable. That will not protect this nation for generations of today and of tomorrow, and for generations that are not even contemplated as we sit here tonight. We have an obligation to stand for this wonderful nation. And I'm proud to join my colleague from Pennsylvania and come here tonight and cry out to America to say, we need to stand once again. We need to fight for our very existence, because that existence is threatened from that financial insecurity that is brought on by this national debt. And I am so confident that when we stand together, when we come into this chamber and we have the open and vigorous debate that we are going to have and that we will have, America will prosper, we will make the hard decisions, and we will stand proudly as one nation for many generations to come that will be the beacon and the light to the world for so many who so need us and who so want us to succeed. And we are committed to that effort, and I yield back the time to my friend from Pennsylvania.
Now, I thank my good friend for joining us tonight. The last principle was one I'm proud to say we've taken some action on here. It has to do with legislation, common practice for Congress to, shortcut things, shortcut the process, not follow regular order, open rules, allowing all members of Congress to offer amendments. And I'm proud that we're, my first 2 years in Congress, I never experienced one open rule. Didn't know what it was like. And I was shocked to find out that that's how normally you did business. That was predominantly, most of the time, it's under open rule. Some of the things we put in place with our rules package is it requiring bills to be published ahead of time so that not only us as members of Congress, but our constituents can read them. And we have that chance to solicit input from them to get that feedback on what the unintended consequences and how it may impact them. The fact that we're now requiring you have to give some evidence, some documentation of where the constitutional authority is for doing this bill. Trying to keep germaneness in terms of what we put forward versus these thousands of page bills that are just a mismatch of different topics. So I thank my colleagues tonight for joining me in this. Certainly thanks the Patriots, like those folks in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, who join in sharing those principles that we have. Those Patriots like that all over this nation, and we're just so appreciative for what they do for this country as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The chair lays before the House the following communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives. Sir, I hereby give notice of my resignation from the United States House of Representatives effective 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, February 9th, 2011. Attached is the letter I submitted to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Signed sincerely, Christopher J. Lee, Member of Congress.
Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that in light of the resignation of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lee, the whole number of the House is 434. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Mr. Speaker, our business being completed, move to adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for morning hour debate.
And the House today passed a bill honoring the late federal judge John Roll by naming a new Arizona